Hey, hey! Holy cow! This ball's got a chance. It could be. It is the Shawn Mackey Show. Hey! Here we go. Season number 3, episode number 3 of the Shawn Mackey Show. Last week, we did a little Bears. We did a little Cubs. We're going to keep doing a little Bears. We're going to do a little Cubs. We got some new Bears players that we need to talk about and discuss. I'll do a couple of them a little bit later in today's show. Today is the day that we don't know anything more about the Seiya Suzuki injury he suffered when Japan was ousted by Venezuela in the World Baseball Classic. It's wait and see. Seiya is on his way back to Cubs camp. There was no imaging done after that game. Hopefully, it may be just a bruise, so it might not be something long term. They got to get some images in there. I mean, looking at the slide, I'm not even certain how he injured it, but those knees are wonky type beast. If he hit that knee in just the right spot and it builds up with that fluid and swells up, got a bruise on that knee, it could take some time. Maybe he can still continue to DH. Don't know yet if he's going to be ready for opening day. This leads me to something. It's great to watch the World Baseball Classic. You've got 20 some odd countries vying for the shot at the championship, and the best players on the best teams advance. But playing this in the middle of spring training, when guys are supposed to be getting work for the upcoming season, I guess they still get work. You're on the World Baseball Classic roster. If you're a pitcher, it's kind of hard. If you do start and play in a game, you're limited to certain numbers of pitches you can throw. But then, do you continue on your same workout regime, or do you feel like, well, we're in the midst of games, so we play today, especially in pool play, like when you've got 4 games to play? I'm sure they still work out and everything, but it's not like, I don't know, it's like when the cat's away, the mice will play. It's a time for you to kind of get a little bit of a workout in, but maybe not as hard as a workout, maybe not work on everything that you should be working on when you're with your normal club in spring training that you would work on. I imagine guys go out to dinner, hanging out, getting to know each other. I don't know. I don't know the whole atmosphere. They're professionals. Hopefully, they wouldn't feel like this is an opportunity for us to slack off. Hopefully, a lot of them would still feel like they had to do what was necessary to continue on the path to opening day. But I would like to see if, so we know the kid from the White Sox, Teal, Team Italy, he suffered a mid-grain hamstring strain, is going to be out 4 to 6 months. This Seiya situation, who knows when he gets back into camp and the Cubs get some x-rays on him or something, this could turn out to be something far worse, which now makes the whole Dylan Carlson, Michael Conforto, Matt Shaw in right field, Chas McCormick situation a little bit different for the Cubs. It kind of makes you start thinking about who might make the team and who might not, just because if you lose your right fielder for any length of time, who knows? Who knows where they go from here? Hopefully, the World Baseball Classic didn't claim a lot of players. Hopefully, everybody's able to go back to their clubs when this is all over. There's just been this little controversy with Mark DeRosa managing, didn't kind of know how pool play worked, didn't do the math quite right, I guess. And there is math involved. I mean, first of all, let's look at what the possible tie-breaking scenarios were when everybody was worried if Team USA was going to actually get in. So 20 teams all across the country, divided into 4 pools, and then each team plays a 4-game round robin. So the top 2 teams in each pool are the teams that advance on to what they call the knockout rounds. That's where it kind of shifts into that single elimination. And going into that game against Italy, Mark DeRosa wasn't quite sure how it all worked, thought he had clinched, kind of rested some guys, didn't play his best guys, and they lost to Italy. And then it came down to Italy needing to win, because if Mexico would have won, that's when all sorts of crazy math got involved, as far as if they won by more than 5 or lost by more than 4 or won by more than 4. There was a chance Team USA might not have made the knockout rounds in this tournament and would have been eliminated absolutely early. You have that little bit of a controversy. And then I guess in USA's game against the Dominican Republic, 2 outs, 3-2 count, runner on third, a 2-1 ball game. Dominican Republic up to bat. And so far, I've only looked at one angle of the strike call. And looks to me like it dropped below the knees after it would have crossed the plate. So I didn't take the time to try to search out a side angle to see if the ball actually crossed at the knees over the plate. Was it legitimately a strike? Was it legitimately a ball? Everybody on each side is going to argue in favor of their outcome. The United States is absolutely going to say it's a strike. The Dominican Republic is absolutely going to say it's a ball. But they didn't have the challenging, whatever this new system is, it ABS, they're going to call it, that people get to challenge, because logistically it wouldn't have worked. You have 20 different countries. Then you've got to get the batting stances and the heights of every single player and kind of get it loaded into that tracking system that they use to determine if it is a ball or if it is a strike. So I think logistically, playing in the parts of the countries and the different countries that they were playing in, plus with so many different guys, like, it's easy for Major League Baseball to implement because they've been playing around with it in the minor leagues. And then they have access to all their guys and their batting stance and their batting style. So, they got a big ass team of IT people and computer, whatever, wizards clacking away at the keyboards. And once they decided they were going to roll this thing out and give it a go, it's easy to implement in Major League Baseball across the United States and parts of Canada. But for the World Baseball Classic, it wasn't something that would have been easily accomplished. Maybe by the time the next one rolls around, after that game controversy again, that they get it figured out to have that in the next go around with this. So now here at the 2026 season, the ABS, the automated ball and strike challenge system, it's going to be implemented. It's going to allow players to appeal home plate umpire decisions. Oh, is this good for the game or bad for the game? I mean, eventually, if this works out and it's really good, do you still need a home plate umpire to make the original call? But then what do you do with these umpires whose calls are constantly being overturned? That part of the umpiring grade system? Yeah. So, a batter, a pitcher, or a catcher can immediately challenge a call, which is verified using camera technology. The system uses a defined 2D strike zone, and with 53.5 to 27% of a player's height at the midpoint of the plate. All right. Teams will start with 2 challenges. A correct challenge is kept. An incorrect one is lost. Extra innings grant 1 extra challenge. This system is aimed at correcting missed calls in high leverage spots. So I think at this point, if this thing works, you're going to have to figure out something to do. You got to get your umpires better. I personally, the whole replay thing in the NFL, I think has caused umpires to maybe not take pride in their craft as much as they may have used to. Either that or it's just always been bad calls. The speed of the game is too fast, and by having the ability to break down a play in super slow motion to see everything, I think it personally for me it hurts the game of NFL. First of all, if referees are constantly overturned on challenges, it's going to affect their livelihood and the way they get graded, and if they make playoff rosters and as far as officiating in the playoffs. But I think at some point, for some of these older referees, younger ones, maybe they're just like, what the fuck's the point? Because they're just going to overturn it anyway. So just make a call to make a call, So I don't know if right now I think bringing too much technology into the sports that we've all known and loved is kind of taking away from the sports a little bit. I do know in baseball, I've felt for a long time, baseball, women's softball, umpires have the ability to determine outcomes of games. Like one man, you can have a guy behind the plate, and if he hates guys on certain teams or has grudges, he's going to make those questionable calls in favor of the other team against the people he has issues with. It's not supposed to happen. But it does happen. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a little bit of a story here. And I think I might have broached this up on one of the other shows, but I was an IHSA umpire for about 2.5, 3 seasons up in the Chicagoland area. And the day I decided to walk away from umpiring, well, it was a culmination of aspects surrounding this weekend tournament I had to do. But at the very end of that championship game, I made a call I'm not extremely proud of. And that's the day I decided to walk away from the game. First of all, when I was an IHSA official, whenever we had, I didn't do a lot of actual high school games. I started out, I was sanctioned IHSA. I could have done high school games, but I was filling my plate up with a lot of travel team, 14U, 15, 16U tournaments and little league games. And I was kind of getting my feet wet. I was able to umpire, and I didn't have the pressure of the IHSA game quite yet. I umpired high school games, but they were travel ball summer league. So they were high school players, but not actual high school level games. And this is where if I would have pulled this shit in an actual IHSA game, that it would have made me feel even worse. But I get to this weekend tournament. Well, okay, let me get backtrack. First of all, one of the things I had issues with umpiring is when you had to umpire as a sole umpire, one guy, you had to umpire from behind the plate. And this even drove me nuts when my daughter was playing D3 college softball all through high school. Too many umpires, there's a lot of lack of hustle amongst umpires. First of all, when you learn to be an umpire, there's all sorts of rules on where you have to line up and position yourselves. Most umpires get that right. What they don't get right is they tend to stay flat-footed in the exact same spot they line themselves up in to make a call on a play that's on the other side of the field. Or officiating with one umpire behind home plate who never leaves behind home plate to make a safe or an out call on a stolen base at second or third. I always felt that it was my job and my duty to get myself as closely as possible to the play that I can be. One, by doing that, it eliminated the fans from saying that I'm not hustling and I wasn't there to see the play. So yes, when you're a sole umpire behind the plate, as soon as you see a guy taking off and stealing, you first got to make the call at the plate. And then you got to get your mask off, get out from behind the plate, and you got to get as close to second base as you possibly can before you make the call, right? Same thing with an umpire. If you're umpiring with two guys and you've got a field umpire and he's lined up based on runners on base and he's set up over into that shortstop area. It drives me nuts to see a play happen, a play hit to third or short, and the umpire immediately just, turning his head to looking at first base to see if out or safe instead of moving closer. Now I get it, when there's runners on base, there are certain umpires are responsible for certain aspects. Like I always worked when I had a second umpire and I was the home plate umpire. I always worked with the home plate umpire, and when I was the plate umpire, and I talked to the guy in the field and I said, "Look, I'm going to cover whatever I can at third and at the plate. You know, unless there's a situation where you're pulled out to left field, and I got to maybe make a call down at first." Home plate umpire kind of has all that realm. But what happens is let's say there's a runner on first and second, and there's a shot to second or third, and that one field umpire is standing over at third. And the first thing he does is he turns to look at third to see if there's a play there. And then if they make a play there, he's got to make that call. Well, now home plate should be going out toward first base to pull up the double play call. And it's kind of vice versa. Sometimes home plate might need to go up the third baseline to make that call at third, so the fielding can concentrate on making the call at first. It's a lot of working together. And I may have that a little bit backwards. Again, it's been 20 years since I umpired. But I get into this tournament. For the majority of this tournament, I'm a single umpire. They didn't have enough umpires, so I'm umpiring these games. And in one of the earlier rounds, these two teams are playing each other. And I guess they didn't like each other, because at one point during the game, I had to warn the coaches from back and forth to each other, disrupting the game. Then I made a call on a play, and a coach was giving me the business on one of the teams. And, I kind of had to educate them on what the rules were of that nature. But that game started, and it was with these two teams, and they were playing each other. And there was a lot of timing out and warning coaches and talking. And at one point, the tournament director had seen something go on that I didn't catch, so he stopped the game to tell them and everything. And it got to be pretty bad between these two umpires, or these two coaches. Well, I get through the whole weekend. Finally, on Sunday, we're getting down to like the semifinal and the final game, and I got a second umpire. We got 3 games. And the championship game comes down to these two jackasses coaches. And I'll tell you what, we had so much trouble. And the other umpire I was working with that day, he had trouble with them as well during Saturday's portion of the tournament. So we got together, we got notes, we asked the tournament director, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm giving these guys their final warning right here." I think they had to play, based on their records, they were in the championship game, but it was one where one of the teams had to win 2 games. So if they won, then they had to win the second game to win. If the one team won the first game, they would have won. So it turns out that they played 2 games that day, and we had to give the coaches their final warning when we took out the lineup cards. And they were like, "You can't do that." And I said, "Well, I'm the home plate umpire, and I can do whatever I want right here, right now, because you've given both of us in 4 separate games yesterday, you've given both of our umpires nothing but trouble. You've given each other nothing but trouble. And we're at this point where we want to finish this tournament and get out of here, and we don't want to hear it, Well, we had to kick one umpire out of the game, or Jesus Christ, one of the coaches out of the game in that final. And it worked out to the point where they had to play that second game, and it was coming down to the final championship game. And we already in one of the games had to kick one of the coaches out. And I think it was early in that last game, we kicked one of the coaches out. So by this time, I'm just really pissed off. I'm frustrated. I'm pretty much already knowing that I'm not going to umpire anymore. Just wasn't something I saw myself doing long term for the rest of my life. I mean, had coaches and players and parents and fans been a little bit better, I might have stuck with it. But we got down to a situation where I think the bases were loaded. The team at bat was down by 2 runs or something like that. And I just remember at some point getting to a 3-2 count. And I rang this guy up. Now, I was the field umpire. I didn't have to ring him up. There was a check swing situation. Catcher appealed to me. I was so pissed off. It was the 3rd out. I wanted this thing to be over. I was done. I rang the kid up. Was it a legit check swing? I don't know. I'm positioned behind second base. Can't really see it that well. Was not proud of myself, but that's the day that I took all of my umpiring equipment to Play It Again Sports and got my $12.95 for it. And I never umpired a game again, simply because of my questionable ethics and the way players, coaches, and fans treated players. So that's my little digression, my little story for today. I did want to talk a little bit. We talked about Seiya. I talked on last week's episode on how stats really don't mean anything in spring training, and they don't. But I did say that we need to see if Jameson Tyone's going to improve at the end of the spring before opening day, or if he's going to get worse. It was no sooner after uploading that episode yesterday when Jameson Taillon proceeded to give up 8 runs to the Dodgers. He has now given up 8 home runs all spring. He's 0-3. His ERA jumped from 19.50 to 22.18. I'm worried. This is one of your 5. And as I said in the last episode, dependable, 12-8, 11-7. But he's not an innings guy. He's not one of these guys you're like, we need him on the roster. Doesn't matter if he wins or loses, what kind of ERA he has. He's got to eat up the innings. Well, if you got a real high ERA, you're not going to eat up the innings. Because I don't think there's any manager in his right mind, unless it's just a desperate situation, will keep you on the mound when you're getting shelled and rocked all day long just to eat up innings. And, typically a major league starter, they might make 30 starts a year if they stay healthy. And, that's 270 innings potential per season. And you're looking at inning eaters, workhorses, guys who take the ball every 5th day and go out and eat up those innings. So you're not taxing your bullpen, are guys that consistently get you to the 180, 190, maybe 200 innings a year. And Jameson Taillon, maybe once in his career, he's pitched about 190 innings, a second time 170, but he's not an innings eater. So he does have me worried based on performance of the spring on how that's going to go for being one of the 5, And they do have some play. Justin Steele's probably not going to come back until May. So they're going to have somebody else in there. I mean, you're looking at Boyd, Horton, if he's ready to go on opening day, Shota, Taillon, and right now probably Colin Ray. Unless they picked up, I'm trying to think if there's somebody out there that I'm missing. Then Steele comes back, you're going to have to decide who's the odd man out. So it's going to probably come down to, it's probably going to come down to Taillon and Ray in their performance. I mean, you still have Javier Assad who can go out and get some innings for you as a starter. Ben Brown's been having a pretty good spring from what I see. I guess the velocity's up. He's got a 3.3 ERA. He started 3 games so far this spring, 15 strikeouts in 10 innings for a 1.3 whip. So there's another question mark right there. So maybe the Cubs got some tools that they can pull out of the bag if Ray and Taillon aren't your guys. Remember, you still got Matthew Boyd's. He's your opening day starter, but he's going to be, he's 36, 37 years old. So he's up there, This kid is, 35. So, still some question marks. Question marks in the outfield now because of Seiya. Question marks on the mound. Some guys are having some great spring. I think, again, and I said on last show that Matt Shaw is absolutely a guy giving me hope. And I threw Dylan Carlson in there on the hope portion of it because not even knowing that Seiya was going to get hurt, not knowing how Matt Shaw would fare if you decided to make him an outfielder, Is he going to start over Seiya if he's not, if Seiya's healthy? No, probably not. So he's going to be your fourth guy. But then again, you're taking a guy who played third, you're working him out in right fields, not been a true outfielder, whereas a Dylan Carlson, a Michael Conforto, those guys absolutely have been and played in the outfield. Carlson's not too bad defensively, so I felt that gave me hope in the realm, and I should have put the hope as Carlson, Conforto, Shaw as a 3 kind of guy thing, because now with Seiya's question marks, we have to see if Matt Shaw continues to rake. Is he your fourth outfielder? If Seiya's not healthy and can't go, who makes it? Carlson, Conforto? We don't know. The jury's out yet. That's what spring is for. And I know stats don't matter until you get to the regular season. But again, they give you cause for hope or cause for concern. And right now, I have a big question mark. Draw it out there for you surrounding Jameson Taillon. And Jameson Taillon, that's a big question mark for me as we forge ahead into this spring. So that's my little World Baseball Classic and my Seiya Suzuki update and my little rant as we push toward opening day for the Cubs and Major League Baseball. So I wanted to shift a little bit now to the Bears. Now, I brought out, we talked about who they signed, who they traded for Garrett Bradbury. They signed some free agents, and over the course of the next couple of weeks, even as we get into Major League actual, baseball season, I'm going to still hit you with these Cubs bits because they're coming out fast and furious. We're starting to learn some things. First of all, and I said this before, Poles is now again shifting to building the defense. You have Dennis Allen for his first year, last year with the Bears. He has ideas of what kind of players he needs on his roster. And that's great because I'll tell you, it's the first time in my life as a football player / coach hearing that a safety like Jaquan Brisker doesn't fit in with Dennis Allen's scheme. And then I hear it again the next day because the reason they decided to go after and sign Kobe Bryant in free agency instead of sticking with Kevin Byard III, even though he was the interceptions leader for all of the NFL last year, wanted to stick around. The Bears kind of wanted him to stick around, but he's not a safety that fits into Dennis Allen's scheme. So I guess Allen's looking for not so much of the big bruising hitters as he is the coverage speed guys that can be all over the field, things of that nature. So I'm going to need to delve into that a little bit more. But I really think the whole Drew Dahlman retirement threw Ryan Poles into a tailspin. Like Poles was just driving around and all of a sudden it started to rain a little bit, and 5 miles down the road, it got really cold and there was a little bit of ice. And then all of a sudden he hits that Drew Dahlman patch of ice and it sends him into a tailspin, and he's foo, 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 foo on the highway before he comes to a complete stop on Garrett Bradbury. Now, there were all sorts of centers this year who are available. And this is one of those things that kills me. I mentioned this a little bit last week on NFL free agency, is you start paying guys and they get too expensive. No matter how freaking good they are, you're going to trade them away or you're going to release them. And this is a move that Poles had to make. He lost his Pro Bowl center. They finally had a decent offensive line last year, and I think that affects left tackle. I think if Dahlman doesn't retire and you've got that core, you've got that money now to go after and maybe get somebody a little bit more proven on the free agent market to play left tackle for you. You sign Theo Benedette again, kind of you're looking at taking him under your wing and kind of developing him a little bit, and that's great. Not a big money guy. But you went back and signed Braxton Jones. And I've made my thoughts known on Jones. He'd been a solid player, but there's just something about me watching him play that is just makes me crazy because it just seems like they could do better at left tackle. So, but you did go out and signed Jedrick Wilson, or is it Wilson or Wills Jr.? So there's going to be some competition at left tackle. I like the Garrett Bradbury deal. I mean, last year he grades out at Pro Football Focus at an overall grade of 60.1, ranked 30th out of 40 centers. Pass blocking 63.1 puts him at 23rd, and run blocking 56.2 puts him at 35th out of 40 centers. But the guy gave up no sacks, and their sacks come from up the middle. So, but he gave up no sacks, had like 20 pressures, had no penalties. How does a guy that gives up no sacks, only had 20 pressures, has no penalties, plays in all 17 games? In fact, he's played in 105 games out of 105 games in his career. So he's a definite workhorse. He's reliable. He's been that way his entire career. But at some point after signing an extension with Minnesota, they let him go. He signs 1 year with New England. He's playing in the Super Bowl last season, has a tremendous, and I think New England signed him to a two-year deal, but then they just decide to trade him. Now, the whole Minnesota thing, he already signed an extension with them, and he was playing so well that he was going to become expensive. And by that time, when he was in Minnesota, I don't think they had a real good quarterback situation going on, because that was very questionable. So they might have felt they needed that money and couldn't pay him, but he gets released by Minnesota, ends up in New England. And even though that last year in Minnesota, he was playing Sam Darnold, but then the Minnesota Vikings decide they're going to stick with J.J. McCarthy after all his injury question marks that knocked his ass out in year one. So Sam Darnold goes on to Seattle last year, and the rest they say is history. Darnold wins his Super Bowl and sets himself up real nicely. Probably stays in Seattle with that coach and that defense. Seattle's going to be a force to be reckoned with next season as well. But I think the whole Garrett Bradbury deal, you had to make that deal, and you traded for him. You had to give up some draft capital, right? You got to pay him a little bit. I think that we really can't go after that big time left tackle now. So for me, the jury's still out on Poles. Like I said, he started building the defense first, overpaid some guys. He's had a couple of coaches or just a new coaching staff. So at this point, the new coach wants certain players. So Poles has to basically let a bunch of guys go and walk, because those guys don't fit in the scheme of what Dennis Allen is thinking. And, the Bears defense dropped off with those same guys from one season to the next. I mean, 3 seasons ago was pretty good, and then worse the year after, and then even worse last year. And I was very critical on Dennis Allen because I felt like, fuck, these are the guys you inherited. These are the guys the team has to go with. So maybe you need to scheme and tweak things so that you can take advantage of those players' strengths. And I don't think, did he try to do that? Did he not try to do that? Do coaches get to a position where they're like, this is what I want to run? Maybe as a professional NFL head coach, you can say, these players don't fit. We're going to run it this year and hope for the best. But then next year, I want new guys. I'm going to tell you who I want, and this is the kind of players we need to go after. So Poles is back to building that defense again. And we're just going to have to wait and see. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Garrett Bradbury, the Chicago Bears' new center, who reunites with Joe Thuney. That solidifies that line. Yet again, question marks at left tackle. We're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. I do know we're going to talk a little bit more about, and I like Kobe Bryant. I think that looks good on paper anyway, statistically wise, and he does have the speed. They didn't go after a big edge rusher. They brought someone in the middle, Neville Gallimore, and that maybe is a beast that eats up that center and guard hole, that collapses that offensive line, that maybe has, now you've got Booker and Montez Sweat producing a little bit more on the edge with the guys you have. Re-signed DeMarco. I like that. So we're going to talk a little bit, but we're going to talk, and I talked a little bit last week about the Devin Bush, Tremaine Edmonds. I think to me, they're kind of like the same guy. But we're going to dive into it a little bit more. We're going to do a little bit more research. We're going to watch a few more game highlights on both players to look at a face-to-face comparison. You know, it's about the same age, statistically about the same. So it was just a matter of Tremaine Edmonds was overpaid, you know. And certain guys will restructure, other guys not so much. So we'll see how that all plays out, right? That's all the time I got for you on this episode of the Shawn Mackey Show. We'll catch you next when we catch you. Peace. Hey, if I made you laugh, made you think, or even made you smile, please tell all your friends. If I didn't, just keep that shit to yourself. Thanks for listening to the Shawn Mackey Show.